The tallest mountain range on Earth, the Himalayas, yields some of the rarest natural products in the world, like hallucinogenic honey that costs $300 per bottle. In Kashmir, farmers harvest saffron, one of the priciest spices ever. And hidden in these rocks is a substance some people call natural Viagra. So why are products on this mountain chain, which spans 5 different countries, so valuable?
The world's most expensive spice comes from this flower, and it takes about 150,000 of them to make just 1 kilo of saffron, a kilo that costs $3,000. Here in Kashmir, saffron is an important part of the economy and cultural identity. It has many uses, including
religious purposes, for pharmacological purposes, for culinary, as a spice, as a mood enhancer.
But Kashmir's saffron industry is facing a crisis. In recent years, farms hit with drought and rising temperatures have lost 65% of their normal yields.
खेत पे हम देखते थे कि पूरा कवर्ड होता था सैफरन से, ठीक है, आज खाली खाली सा जमीन पड़ा है.
And the supply chain is riddled with imitation saffron.
Gardenia flower or safflower is being sold as saffron, corn silk or tissue paper, plastics, but that is not saffron at all.
The Indian government launched initiatives to try and help, but the farmers we spoke to say they haven't been enough. All of this combined has left farmers frustrated and driven some out of the industry. We went to Kashmir to see if there's a future for the region's red gold. Saffron comes from these 3 tiny strands, called stigmas, found in this purple flower, the Crocus sativus. The crocus can only be grown in a handful of locations. Kashmir is one of the only places in India with the right conditions to grow saffron, and farmers have grown it here for 3,500 years.
स्पाइस तो ये बिल्कुल इसके मुकाबले में कोई स्पाइस नहीं है.
That's Ashik. His family's been growing crocus flowers here for nearly a century.
और ये बीज अंदर से है, तो ये अभी उसमें है कि हमें दूर से पता चलता है कि यहाँ पे बीज है इसका सैफरन, ठीक है. फिर जो है फूल इस बीज में से आता है.
Once planted, the flowers need about 2 years to mature before they can produce good saffron. Come October, Ashik heads out to hand harvest the delicate purple flowers. Almost everyone helping is related to him. Since the flowers don't bloom all at once, just 5 years ago, Ashik could harvest for an entire month. But his crop is shrinking. This year, with fewer flowers, the harvest ended in just 6 days.
इससे पहले हम जाते थे 10 बार 15 बार, मतलब उतनी, मतलब मैं कह रहा हूँ 5-6 साल पहले, ठीक है. अब ज़्यादा अब कम हो रहा है.
Ashik's farm is not unique. He's getting hit with the same climate and political issues affecting the entire region.
Climate change is definitely having an effect.
The temperature, earlier it used to be a bit cold this time around the season when the saffron harvest would take place. But now it's very warm, so that has affected saffron badly.
Saffron needs cold soil to grow, yet Kashmir's temperature has risen by 1.45 degrees Celsius in the last 20 years.
And the rains, we had very few rains in the last, I think, 4 or 5 years.
When the rains do come, they're more intense. In 2014, heavy flooding washed away the saffron crop, and saffron farmers are still reeling from the severe drought in 2018 that dried out the soil.
ये क्वालिटी में उतना ज़्यादा इम्पैक्ट ही नहीं पड़ता है, बट क्वांटिटी में इम्पैक्ट पड़ता है. और टाइम पे बारिश न होने की वजह से प्रोडक्टिविटी कम हो जाती है.
Then there are the political issues. Kashmir is a disputed region between India and Pakistan, but India administers the part where saffron grows. In 2019, the Indian government implemented an internet and communication blackout. That, coupled with the pandemic lockdowns the following year, caused saffron farmers and the supply chain to suffer. Over the past decade, saffron production was so low, the government launched the National Saffron Mission. The goal of the $53 million mission was to revive the saffron crop. It promised to rejuvenate saffron bulbs and build irrigation systems to fight drought. But many farmers say the mission hasn't helped as promised.
बहुत सारे पैसे खर्च हो गए, मिलियंस खर्च हो गए, ठीक है. आई थिंक जितना मेरा एक्सपीरियंस है रिगार्डिंग सैफरन की, वो सब फेल हो गए.
Of the 124 wells the National Saffron Mission promised to dig, the government says 121 were installed. Ashik's farm got one of those wells, but he says it never worked.
उन्होंने दिया था कि सैफरन मिशन बिल्कुल लगाया हुआ है, जिस दिन से लगाया हुआ है तब से ऐसे ही पड़ा है.
ये आप देखिए ना, मतलब जब से लगाया तब से यहीं पे है, ऐसे ही है, कोई ये नहीं है।
And farmers had to pay for these irrigation systems.
5,000 रुपये मे त्रो मान मे तकरीबन 1.5 लाख रुपये यमन निश कमन निश एग्रीकल्चर वाले निश मोन 1.5 लाख रुपये मे त्रो अगर जमीन 30 कनालन मे 3 पर 15 गो सोद 1.5 लाख रुपये मोन ना दिवान इरिगेशन वनकस आब तो ना दिवान तिम पोंस वापस.
Suhail, who works on the saffron mission, says that's because when the government tried to install irrigation systems,
We faced stern resistance from certain farmers because they felt if we cut open the soil, it would somehow deplete the quality of saffron.
the mission claims saffron production has rebounded.
This would not have been possible if National Mission on Saffron would not have been there.
But these farmers aren't experiencing the production growth the government is reporting.
आज खाली खाली सा ज़मीन पड़ा है.
Yet Ashik has continued his family's saffron tradition. In the evenings after harvesting,
सारी फैमिली एक साथ बैठ के ये रेड स्टिग्मा, जिसको हम रेड गोल्ड कहते हैं, इसका जो है वो निकालते हैं.
the stigmas are fragile, so they have to be removed by hand.
ये मेरे पापा है, अभी हम यही कर रहे हैं. ये ऑर्डर आया है, 200-250 ग्राम का ऑर्डर आया है, तो अभी हम वही बना रहे हैं.
Then the stigma's less valuable yellow tips are cut off.
ये जो प्रोसेस है, इसमें से वो जो लवर पार्ट है वो रेड स्टिग्मा का वो बाहर निकलता है, वो ये आगे गिर जाता है, ठीक है, और रेड स्टिग्मा इसी में पड़ जाता है.
The red stigma houses the characteristic compounds that give saffron its bitter taste and aroma. Once it's dried, the saffron can be packaged up. It takes Ashik and his dad 2.5 hours to process enough saffron for just this tiny container. The amount of work required contributes to the spice's high price.
फार्मर ब्रोकर को बेचता है, ब्रोकर जो है वो फर्म को बेचता है, राइट, और फर्म है कि उनके पास रजिस्ट्रेशन होती है, वो ऑल ओवर इंडिया बेच सकते हैं.
15 years ago, Ashik's family could make $4,000 for its yearly saffron harvest. Today, Ashik brings in just about $900 a season. Once it hits the market, Kashmiri saffron faces another problem: fake saffron.
What is sold in the name of saffron is illegally dyed corn silk or tissue paper, plastics which are not fit for human consumption and made to look identical to saffron.
Counterfeiters have also turned to safflower to pass off as saffron, but the plant has a completely different taste. Because of saffron's high price, counterfeiters can make a hefty chunk of change.
A layman cannot differentiate visually.
A source of much of the misleading products is Iran, which produces 90% of the world's saffron.
People may use pure Kashmir saffron adulterated with maybe Iranian saffron, which comes to a very cheap rates to India.
Iranian saffron can cost 48% less than Kashmir's, which is considered more aromatic and nutritious.
Overall, it's bad for the whole saffron industry and especially for the Kashmir saffron farmers that their name gets tarnished.
To help raise prices, 2 years ago, the government's saffron mission created this trading center called the Saffron Park.
We are the guardians or custodians of the GI of Kashmir saffron.
The Saffron Park's main goal was to help identify and stop fake saffron. Instead of selling on the open market, farmers could now drop off their saffron harvest at the center for storing and authentication.
We do not accept saffron in dried form in this trade center. We only accept fresh flowers to be brought to the collection center so that we ensure that the flowers are grown in the fields and saffron farms of Kashmir.
In the lab, scientists can test to make sure the saffron is real. They first do a water test.
Threads of saffron are put into water or milk. It should give very slowly release a yellow color and not an instant coloring of red or orange color. And that is a purity test for saffron.
But they also use machines to look for levels of saffron's characteristic compounds. If it's proven fake, it's thrown out. And if it's real saffron, it gets packaged up with a GI tag.
Geographic Indication Certificate. Saffron of India is the only saffron in the world who has been given this certificate.
Just like champagne only comes from a specific part of France.
GI tag saffron should be taken as an authentic, pure Kashmiri saffron.
The center then markets the saffron and sells it online through its new auction site.
Every saffron bottle is traceable to the farmer and his land. It has been a very successful model of e-auction that we have tried.
Muzamil says saffron that would normally sell for $1,300 on the open market can sell for $3,000 through the center.
It is 2.5 times what they used to get. Then they have a channel. They don't have any middlemen. They just grow it and then sell it off and go back to their homes with their money.
Suhail said the center has been a success and works with 35% of Kashmir's saffron farmers, or about 6,000 families.
We are doing good. I'm damn sure we are building on their trust. We are giving them economic stability. We are giving them a better value of their produce.
But not everyone's convinced. Bashik said he doesn't trust giving his crop to a center. The industry's woes have driven some farmers in Kashmir to leave the saffron business altogether.
Wunkesan zamindaras amuk fayda. Zamindaro kya chun zamin trayit.
काम को छोड़ के दूसरे काम को पकड़ना पड़ा है.
6,000 families have left the saffron industry. Reports say many have shifted to apple and almond growing.
हम उस चीज़ से बाहर आएंगे, ठीक है ना? तब जाके हम यही कह रहे हैं कि हमारा इंटरेस्ट जो है इस चीज़ से खत्म हो चुका है.
The National Saffron Mission hopes to turn things around.
We have had major setbacks. We are fighting it. There should be acknowledgement of our efforts. If everything goes well, 2 to 3 years, this mission would be done and dusted.
Because ultimately, the goal among farmers and the government is the same: to save Kashmiri saffron.
This is a cultural identity of Kashmir and especially the people of Pampur. I feel very proud, to be a part of the area which grows saffron. But the thing is that, the production is declining. It really disheartens me.
Everything is at stake as far as this crop is concerned. We cannot let go of our heritage. We cannot.
हम दुआ करते हैं कि मतलब हमारा जो है जिसको हम मतलब कि प्रोडक्ट अच्छा निकले, ऊपर वाले से ही दुआ करते हैं.
Next, we head to India's Ladakh region, which produces luxurious cashmere shawls.
This is how pashmina is made, using ancient methods that date back 2,000 years. And here, workers keep this ancient tradition alive. From herding the goats, harvesting the wool, weaving it together, and dyeing the fabric. In Western countries, pashmina is known as cashmere, with a C. But this unique fabric originated in the Himalayan region of Kashmir, with a K, the disputed region between India, Pakistan, and China.
Pashmina of Ladakh is considered one of the best. The animals graze in very high altitude. The food they eat, the grass they eat, they are very different than the rest of the world,
On today's episode, we'll see what it takes to make a pure pashmina shawl and what makes this fabric remarkable. Nowadays, China mass produces most of the global cashmere fabric, and these shawls have become widely popular across the US. But traditional pashmina from Kashmir, made with centuries-old methods, is rare to find. To do all this painstaking work, it requires a robust workforce. An owner, Sonam Churul, hires only women, many of them facing tough circumstances, some abandoned by husbands or parents.
यहाँ पर तो एक जेंट्स नहीं पूरा लेडी है. जनरेटर स्टार्ट करने से लाइट ऑन ऑफ पूरा. बाकी तो मैं बाहर का काम में कर लेती हूँ. जो मशीन खराब हुआ मैकेनिक लाना कोई भी हो ऐसे कर लेते हो. लेडीज से नहीं ये नहीं हो सकता है, वो बात नहीं है. करना या ना करने का है. फिर बाकी करने देना या नहीं करने देने का है. इसमें जो अपना अलग सोचते हैं लेडीज़ के लिए, इसलिए मैंने कर दिखाने के लिए थोड़ा इनको हिम्मत आने के लिए रखा है. लेडीज़ बाकी कोई वो नहीं है.
सुबह जल्दी उठ के काम पे आना, इधर काम करना, सब कुछ अच्छा लगता है. सीखने को मिलता है ना, सनम जैसे अच्छा लगता है ना लड़कियों के साथ काम करना.
Each pashmina begins with wool combed from goats herded in the region's expansive highlands.
हम इधर के बैल बीड़ू बकरा के लिए फिर वो ऐसे रखता है. हमारे गांव के बकरा के पश्मीना निकलता है. जून का पश्मीना निकलता है. फिर हमारे ले में हमारा सोसाइटी है, सोसाइटी में बेचता है. फिर सोसाइटी नहीं कोई पता नहीं वो कश्मीर का बेचता है, कहीं बेचता है, दिल्ली कहीं बेचता है, पता नहीं है. हमारे सोसाइटी में बेचता है पश्मीना.
The wool comes from the soft undercoat of the goats. And each animal only produces a little over a pound of wool a year.
अच्छा ऐसा होता है किसी बोलता है पे बूटा पहले बूटा लोग ऐसा बोलता है फिर कहीं गाँव से बिल्कुल ठंड है वही पश्मीना अच्छा होता है बोलते हैं
पता नहीं ये मतलब कोई दुनिया में नहीं है ये ले का जैसा इसलिए मशहूर हो गया होगा बाकी तो इसमें पता नहीं क्या क्या इसमें क्वालिटी होगा ये कहीं भी नहीं है दुनिया में ले का पश्मीना जैसा ये यान जो है ना ये इसका फैब्रिक अलग सा है इसलिए जो अलग है फिर अलग लगता है ना सबको अच्छा लगता है
From here, the fiber goes to studios where it's cleaned and woven. Pashmina wool passes through many hands in the early stages.
पर अब इसके बाद कटाई के बाद फिर अपने घरों में देते हैं गोला बनाने के लिए डबलिंग करने के लिए धागा यान फिर यहाँ पर चढ़ाते हैं वहाँ पर तना लगाते हैं तना मशीन पे इसके बाद होता है तना लगाने के बाद ये वेविंग होता है ये ऐसे होता है ना जी शटल को ये पुनिया बनाते हैं चरखे से बनाते हैं ये हाथ से ये चरखे से बना के फिर इसमें ऐसे करते हैं इसमें कसते हैं इसमें फंसाते हैं फिर ये इसमें डालते हैं फिर इसमें शटल इसमें बॉक्स में लगाते हैं फिर चालू होता है
The shawl and pashmina industry is still a major contributor to the region's economy, but it's seen a decline at the end of the 20th century thanks to a rise in modern technology, competition from other countries, and a decrease in demand because of cheaper imitation shawls. And although lockdowns imposed by India's government in Kashmir don't affect this Himalayan region as much as Srinagar, business owners still feel the impact.
करने का तो इतना नहीं बोलते हैं वहाँ पर बहुत जगह अच्छा है ना वहाँ पर तो सब कुछ है मगर प्रॉब्लम बताते हैं ऐसे है इतना साल से तबाही है ये क्या करें बहुत अपना बताते हैं जो अपने अंदर होता ना टेंशन जैसा चिंता होता ना वो बताते हैं
Sunam also worries about Chinese pashmina copies.
यहाँ से पश्मीना ले जाके ऊन वहाँ मिक्स करके केमिकल डाल के उसमें छोटा छोटा काट के मशीन में डाल के एक जैसा बना के लाते हैं किसी मतलब पहचानना मुश्किल होता है हमें तो होता है बाकी कस्टमर को मुश्किल होता है एक जैसा बना के
But authenticity is still prized by certain customers. Nuang Phuntsok sells the locally produced pashmina to customers all over the world.
Tourism is the only industry we have in Leh. And of course, then tourists is our main customer, you know. And every tourist want to get something souvenir from Leh. So if there is no tourist, there will be no people to buy my product.
Despite the grueling work, Sunam sustains a livelihood for herself and the women she employs. And she's proud of it.
कोई होता है किसी को धक्का लगता है किसी को खर्चे का होता है किसी को बच्चे का टेंशन होता है किसी को पति का होता है ना प्रॉब्लम जो पूछने वाला तो उनको मैं बताते हैं ऐसे ऐसे करो ये रास्ता दिखाते हैं बाकी कोई नहीं पूछेंगे तो हम ज़बरदस्ती क्यों उनको सौंपेंगे है ना
In a remote Kashmiri village, we meet Manohar, who hangs from cliffs to find a supposed miracle aphrodisiac.
The valley of Padar is one of the most remote regions in Jammu and Kashmir. And Manohar Lal is the only one in his small village who dares to harvest Shilajit.
हमारे गांव का कोई बंदा इस पहाड़ी में जाना नहीं चाहता बोले ये डेंजरस काम है
Today, he's heading out with his son Lakshmi and their friend Aditya. The journey to the Pir Panjal range in the lower Himalayas will take them about 2 to 3 days.
जब पहले गए थे डर तो बड़ा डेंजरस वाला रास्ता था डर तो लग ही जाता है
जंगलों में तो भालू भी होता है रीछ भी होता है तो थोड़ा देख के जाना पड़ता है
They're going to climb up 12,000 feet. That's the height at which Shilajit forms in the Himalayas. It's also found in Russia, Tibet, and even the north of Chile. After 10 hours of hiking, the men spot some deposits. But they're sitting on a steep rock wall, and the only way of getting there is climbing. Now, Manohar is on his own. He uses nothing but his own body for support. It's mind over matter, walking on the edge at 12,000 feet.
डेंजर से आस्ते आस्ते से जाना पड़ता, देख के जाना पड़ता है। अगर कहीं फिसल गए तो मर भी सकते हैं, गिर जाते हैं।
Finally, he reaches the Black Shilajit rocks. It's hard like cement, so he needs a chisel to break it off. They're found in the cracks and crevices of mountains where rain and snow can't get in.
ये समझो पत्थर की चर्बी।
It forms when microorganisms decompose certain plants over centuries. What's left behind is shilajit.
मान लो जिस तरह गाय का मूत्र की खुशबू होती है, इस तरह शिलाजीत की भी खुशबू होती है। चख के भी पता चलता है कि शिलाजीत है। ये कड़वी होती है।
Manohar usually extracts it in spring and then again in fall before the snow can get to it.
पुरख जो बोलते हैं कि गर्मी में सांप होते हैं, शिलाजीत को ये चाटते हैं, इसको काफ़ी पसंद करते हैं, इसलिए इसको गर्मी में नहीं जाते हैं।
After collecting about 500 grams, they call it a day and set up a camp to stay overnight.
Everybody is trying to be healthy and eat good food. तो उसकी वजह से लोग चाहते तो हैं उनको शिलाजीत मिले.
Shilajit has its roots in Ayurvedic medicine, which originated in India over 3,000 years ago. It's a traditional healing system that uses natural products, and ancient texts talk about its healing powers. But Shilajit can't be eaten in its raw form, so Manohar first cooks the rocks. They dissolve in boiling water. He filters out sand and other impurities.
हम इसकी फिल्ट्रेशन करते हैं अराउंड कई बार 2 बार, कई बार 4 या 5 बार भी करनी पड़ती है जब तक हमारे को दिखे कि कोई भी इम्प्योरिटीज जो हैं वो उसमें नहीं रह गई हैं.
Here in Kashmir, they have a unique recipe for it.
पुराने शास्त्रों में भी लिखा है और पुराने ट्रेडिशनली जम्मू एंड कश्मीर में इसी तरह से शिलाजीत बनाते हैं कि उसमें थोड़ा सा गौमूत्र, थोड़ा सा देसी घी, थोड़ा सा गंगा जल और थोड़ा सा शहद डालते हैं.
The remaining mixture gets sticky as it hardens, forming an edible Shilajit paste. Research in Shilajit is limited, but Ayurvedic experts say that it is rich in metallic compounds, minerals, and nutrients. And it's especially effective for treating infertility.
They did find that the sperm count increased. They also saw an increase in testosterone levels, as well as things like energy, muscle growth, not just in men, but also in women.
It also contains fulvic acid, which is said to boost immunity and reduce inflammation.
इसको खाने से 10-15 दिन के बाद लोगों को आराम आता है.
And some studies show that Shilajit could help treat cognitive disorders.
With Alzheimer's, it's been shown to decrease the accumulation of the tau protein. And the tau protein is the protein that accumulates increased plaques in the brain and leads to Alzheimer's.
Like most dietary supplements, Shilajit is not regulated by the FDA. And there are tons of fake products on the market. So Aditya Sumbriya ensures that his products are the real thing by going along with Manohar on the hunt.
स्केर्सिटी है इसकी, बहुत रेयर है, बहुत डिफ़िकल्ट है इसको ढूंढना, तो उसकी वजह से मतलब मैक्सिमम लोगों को ओरिजिनल चीज़ नहीं मिल पाती है.
The fakes usually come in powder form and may be adulterated with coal and fertilizers. Others contain a mineral wax called azocarite, which looks like Shilajit but has no medicinal value. The most potent kind of Shilajit is said to contain traces of gold. But it's very rare and expensive, selling for about $60 for just 2.5 teaspoons. The overall market for infertility supplements like Shilajit is also booming. It's expected to reach $3 million by 2030. Still, some places like Whole Foods have banned Shilajit altogether.
It's like from the earth, the risk of it having the heavy metals or the mycotoxins may be greater than other herbs, and perhaps there were some, adverse effects when they weren't purified properly.
That's why experts say it's best to check the product's authenticity by asking for a certificate of analysis.
And usually this document is a simple document. It's just what they've done to make sure that what you are purchasing is what it is, in fact. And the second piece of it is also just looking at what testing have they done.
Manohar's wife fears for him every time he goes on these hikes.
उधर बाहरी में देखते हैं थोड़ी मिलती है मदद हो खेती बाड़ी बस और क्या इधर पेट भरने के लिए
Farming is impossible during the harsh winters, so the extra income from Shilajit really helps them get by.
पता नहीं पापा कैसे चलते हैं, लेकिन हाँ इतना पता है पापा रिस्क में ये वो उठा लेते हैं, क्योंकि हमें स्कूल मतलब फीस ये वो सब कुछ है तो उन्हें करना ही होता है.
Shilajit is part of the family's daily diet too. Manohar boils milk and adds it in.
एक बार मेरा ये फ्रैक्चर हो गया था पाँव, उस टाइम पर मैंने कोई 100 ग्राम खाया था. मैक्सिमम मेरे ख्याल में कोई 50% इससे फर्क लगा, नहीं तो मुझे लाठी के सहारे चलना पड़ता था.
For him, using Shilajit is a tradition that goes back generations.
पहले मैंने अपने दादाजी से सुना था, वो तकरीबन छोटा था मैं, तो सटोरी लगा देते हैं, ऐसे ऐसे पहाड़ी में शिलाजीत होता है.
Now, he's happy to say he's continuing that legacy.
In neighboring Nepal, a tribe has been harvesting hallucinogenic honey for generations, but it isn't easy.
The village of Sildunga sits about 6,000 feet above sea level. 64 families live here, and they're all involved in the hunt for honey. Everyone comes together the day before for the Maruni dance, which celebrates good over evil. The next day, Man, the village's main honey hunter, gets the handmade bamboo ladder ready. They keep essentials to the minimum: ropes, buckets, and gear to protect against bee stings. They're heading to Tarebhir, a cliff where they've hunted for thousands of years. It's a 3-hour drive. The village elder leads the commencement ritual. At the bottom of the cliff, they start a fire to smoke out the bees. At the top, another group assembles the ladder. Then they tie it to a tree and slowly move it down the cliff. Man climbs down the ladder barefoot for the best grip. He's about 80 stories above ground.
भिममा चढ्नु चाहिँ गाह्रो हुन्छ, एकदमै डराएर चढ्नु पर्ने क्या. तल माथिबाट त यो हातको भरमा चाहिँ जाने हो.
But for safety, Mun ties himself to the ladder by a rope. That's his only harness. As the bees swarm around him, he puts his hands in his pocket to protect them from stings. He still remembers the time when he was attacked by bees 3 years ago. The stings are painful, and to avoid fainting, Mun rubs honey into his hands. But he's trading one risk for another, because the honey makes his hands slippery. Still, it has been 30 years since a honey hunter died on the job. Mun uses his 12-foot-long stick called a tango to cut the honeycomb. Finally, he breaks off the comb. 800 feet below, a plastic sheet catches it. They collected 8 combs, leaving behind 36 others. The next day, hunters head back to the village and start extracting the honey. Mun says it's more abundant, stronger, and sweeter in the spring. The smaller combs usually have the most, about 500 ounces. Locals celebrate the hunter's safe return in a tradition called shosho. It's meant to settle any nerves the men had during the hunt.
समाजको लागि अब गर्छु भनेर आगो निस्किएपछि त हैन त्यो त गर्नै पर्यो जसरी भए नि जसरी गर्नै पर्यो डर त हुने भयो नि.
These customs have been passed down for generations in Nepal, where people have been using this honey as a natural medicine since 1300 BC. They believe that it cures respiratory issues and that it works as an antiseptic and an aphrodisiac. While scientists are still researching the effects of mad honey, global demand has exploded in recent years. And that has led to overharvesting, with foreign groups coming in to hunt for their own honey in the Gurung's land. So the Gurungs found a solution to regain control. And there's a reason why it's home to the very uncommon mad honey. The largest honeybee species in the world, measuring up to 1.2 inches, lives here. The Apis laboriosa nest in altitudes ranging from 3,000 to 10,000 feet above sea level. And they feed on a specific type of rhododendron that has a neurotoxin in its nectar. That's what triggers hallucinations. But climate change is causing the flowers to bloom unpredictably. The bee population is also shrinking because of natural disasters like wildfires, heavier rainfall, and extreme temperature changes. This all means less honey. In 2022, the village harvested about 4 gallons of honey, compared to about 40 gallons in 2017. Half of the honey is distributed evenly to every single villager. The rest goes to markets in Nepal. Other cliffs across the Himalayas and Turkey also have mad honey. And it sells online for hundreds of dollars. But this village makes only $1,800 on average every year from honey sales.
ब्याङमा हाल्ने कि एउटा गाउँमै चाहिँ अब के गर्ने त्यो चाहिँ कुरा चाहिँ त्यो बेलामा चाहिँ हुन्छ
So it's not really about the money. Most people here rely on farming for a steady income, like Man's father. But he participates in all of the hunting traditions like every villager. Man began hunting in his early 40s, when the Gurangs believe a man is in the prime of his life. Before that, he worked construction jobs in Malaysia. In fact, 56% of Nepali families have at least one person working and living abroad because of the lack of jobs in the country. They send home more than $8 billion a year in remittances. Man's son is also a construction worker.
रोगमा लेभल 1 मा चाहिँ काम गर्नको लागि चाहिँ कामको सिलसिलामा चाहिँ कतारमा गएको छ
But Man hopes he will come home soon to carry on the tradition of honey hunting.
तल भिरमा जानी अब मै भनम न पहिले चाहिँ मै गयो नि त हैन तर म मात्रै सिकेर पनि भएन नि मेरो भाइ मेरो छोरा हैन उनीहरुले पनि सिक्नु पर्यो भन्ने हिजो भयो नि त म चाहिँ गइन हिजो
Our next stop is in Tibet, where you can find a unique fungus that sells for $125 for only a gram.
Caterpillar fungus grows in the remote Tibetan Plateau and Himalayan mountains, but that's not the only place you can find it. You can also find it in New York City's Chinatown. Here, nestled among countless drawers of dried mugwort leaves and hibiscus flowers, there it is, a small pile of 50 or so pieces of dried caterpillar fungus. Here, 1 gram of it costs about $30, but that's a steal. Vendors on eBay, for example, will try to get away with listing a gram for $125. The price is so high simply because this hybrid creature is incredibly rare. It shows up only for a few weeks each year in the remote regions of Nepal, Tibet, India, and Bhutan. And even there, the fungus can still be tricky for collectors to find, hidden amongst a sea of grass. For centuries, it's been a staple of traditional Tibetan and Chinese medicine.
Traditionally, it was used as a sort of general tonic for immune support.
So, for instance, a family might add some of it to chicken soup to make you feel better. It's even rumored that it can be used as some sort of Himalayan Viagra, though there's little evidence to back that claim up. People also buy the fungus as a gift or use it for bribes or as a status symbol. As a result, better-looking pieces fetch a higher price.
It's all dependent on exactly the color of the caterpillar fungus, like even say the shape of its body when it died, all these things that don't necessarily have anything to do with medicinal value make all the difference for the economic value.
In 2017, for example, high-quality pieces sold for as much as $140,000 per kilo, or about $63,000 per pound. Now, caterpillar fungus has always been pricey, but experts say its value really skyrocketed in the 1990s and 2000s because of a growing Chinese economy. The resulting increase in disposable income ultimately helped drive a massive boom in harvest. In the Tibetan Autonomous Region, for example, collectors reportedly hauled out more than 3 times as much caterpillar fungus in the early 2000s than they did in the 80s. And now, many families depend on the cash it brings in. In fact, experts say that up to 80% of household income in the Tibetan Plateau and Himalayas can come from selling caterpillar fungus. Just one district in Nepal reported collecting $4.7 million worth of caterpillar fungus in 2016. That is 12% more than the district's annual budget. But those profits are at risk. Surveys indicate that the annual harvests have recently declined.
The collectors themselves mostly attributed this to overharvesting, acknowledging that their own collection pressure was driving these declines.
And it doesn't help that it's difficult to regulate the harvest.
And all these different political units have different policies.
And in the end, it is really down to county level and how it's implemented.
And climate change is also causing problems. The fungus is more abundant in areas with cold, long winters, which are increasingly hard to come by.
We end our journey where we started, in Kashmir, which is home to this floating market where farmers grow and sell crops on the famous Dal Lake.
Every morning at sunrise, Kashmiri farmers gather at Srinagar's famous floating market on Dal Lake. Muhammad Sadiq Khan paddles half a mile to get there from his home to the other side of the water. Just a decade ago, Muhammad would have met up with hundreds of other sellers. These days, though, there are just a few dozen left. Most of their families have traded here for generations. Srinagar's floating market has survived decades of conflict, political upheaval, and natural disasters. But today, the lake itself is at risk. Sewage dumping and pollution are suffocating the waters farmers depend on. We went to Dal Lake in Indian-administered Kashmir to find out how this floating market is still standing.
Market Shabaji, Kadishwar, Swadishia, Padua market gas, concert get.
Roughly 60,000 people depend on Dal Lake for their livelihoods. Many work in tourism and fishing. But the lake's agriculture is one of its most important industries. On this cold winter morning, Muhammad picks up collard greens to sell.
Course subject best. You buy no cool.
What makes them unique is how they're grown. People began farming inside the lake centuries ago. Over time, generations of farmers passed down their methods.
What was this? I just got asked beautiful path Peter, it about fish path.
These floating gardens are called Raad in Kashmiri. Some grow naturally, others are artificial. Farmers weave together wetland plants and bring up the roots and soil from the bottom of the lake to layer into what is essentially a floating mat. They plant collard leaves, turnips, carrots, and other produce. But the market's most popular crop actually grows under the water. The lotus root, locally known as nadru, is used in many Kashmiri dishes. And Dal Lake is considered one of the region's best producers.
ये जो चीज़ से टेस्ट पसंद क्या क्या है पब्लिक का इशू करोड़ बंदों का इशू क्या क्या
The floating market runs every day for 2 hours, even in the dead of winter. Farmers wear an iconic woolen overcoat called a peran to keep warm. They share a traditional Kashmiri green tea called kahwa that's mixed with cinnamon, cardamom, and saffron. And they wait for shopkeepers who travel from the city to buy their vegetables. It's a ritual that has been going on for at least 100 years.
ये मार्केट को मैं प्राण आसान है शुरू ऐसा पाई
Floating markets like this one were once a central part of life across Asia. They date back to the 14th century, but most still around today are less than 200 years old. They popped up in places like Vietnam, Thailand, and parts of India, where rivers, wetlands, and coastlines were the main routes for transporting people and goods. So trading on the water made a lot of sense. But as infrastructure improved and roads were built in these areas, vendors started to move their goods by land. By the mid-20th century, floating markets throughout Asia became tourist attractions, like Dal Lake's market. Visitors filled the hundreds of houseboats lining the lake. They'd take rides in small boats called shikaras to get an up-close look at the floating market. By the 1980s, tourism became a thriving industry.
Yet when you're tourist are na zyade, man ek shikari. Mush ne na shikari. Ne jo shooting man wo tha. Ne jo khaner karane bu ya pore sa patera. Shman bad.
But Kashmir lies on a political and religious fault line, and that has made it hard to keep attracting visitors. India and Pakistan began to fight over the territory after they gained independence from British rule in 1947. Unrest flared up again in the 1990s, and fighting between separatists and Indian security forces drove most tourists away. Despite ongoing conflict, farmers here kept growing and selling produce from their boats every morning for decades. But in 2014, devastating floods brought everything to a halt for the first time in the market's history.
It was sorry, Abu. It was Abu because my makan pe aun thi.
Dal Lake was virtually deserted. The market stopped. It took farmers months to recover. Eventually, more than a year later, things began to pick up again. But as Srinagar's population grew, so did its environmental problems. By the 1980s, locals were complaining about the sewage being dumped from hundreds of houseboats. Studies show they're one of the lake's biggest polluters.
Inni aban kar sabzi kharab. Acha houseboat volti latrine, bait volti latrine, soil se latrine ke latrine. Amsi ke sabzi kharab. Unko pollution andar. Zamin ko kharab.
But that's just one part of a massive waste problem. The government admitted that more than 44 million liters of sewage from the city was being dumped into the lake every day. That's enough to fill more than 17 Olympic-sized swimming pools.
Tamam water lagalan. Aaj bayne su karun kiya.
The government announced it would connect all houseboats to sewage plants last year. It banned plastic on the lakeshore and ordered mechanical dredgers to scoop out invasive weeds and other kinds of waste. But even a cleaned up Dal Lake would still face yet another challenge.
Lokal bache paran. Nimchani lai karam kiske. Nimche parne kis payas.
Mohammed says farming hasn't been profitable enough to entice the next generation. In fact, some vegetables cost him more to grow than what he can sell them for. And competition has grown fierce.
It was a rush. It when a pinchumudi to let fuck. That's one gamatan hun mall. Load kare and care, red and care, guardian care.
It's why many farmers are unsure about the future of the market. Some have left farming or work other jobs just to get by.
और वजह जाकर पिछले फिलहाल ये काम करन बोट है करन मिसाल घर से बोझ दा दशवे से सीन करन आज आए वन थोड़ा गरीबी थी अच्छी नहीं खास कहीं.
Muhammad makes just enough to care for himself and his wife Salima Jan. But he refuses to let that discourage him. He has hope that the lake, its floating gardens, and the market will survive.
Waqt waj I saw first class saw. And the ban is filal पता नहीं खुदा वानी करी खुदा से अच्छे सो रहे